Is it possible that there is something out here that we literally haven't seen before?
In November 2003, scientists tagged a healthy 9-foot great white off the coast of southwestern Australia. Months later, the tag washed ashore on a remote beach, but the shark never followed. The data locked inside told a chilling story that defied all logic. This was not just any shark. This was an apex predator.
So it couldn't have been just a regular great white shark. There's no way.
Untouchable at the top of the food chain. Yet something had swallowed it whole and dragged it nearly 2,000 feet into the freezing abyss. The question haunted scientists for years. What creature could be big enough to do that? The shark that vanished. In November 2003, a research team off the southwestern coast of Australia was running the first large-scale great white tagging study those waters had ever seen. Filmmaker Dave Riggs was there to document every part of the operation. The team pulled alongside a healthy 9-foot female, weighing close to 500 pounds, and fixed a data logger to her dorsal fin. The shark moved through the water with a presence none of the crew quite shook off, and somebody started calling her Alpha. The name stuck. 9 feet is not small, and that fact matters for everything that follows. A 500-pound great white is not a juvenile or a straggler at the edge of its range. This is a fully grown apex predator, an animal that has sat at the top of the ocean's food chain for tens of millions of years, without once having to look over its shoulder. The tag fixed to the shark was a data logger that recorded depth, ambient water temperature, light, and movement second by second, storing everything internally for months. It was not broadcasting anything live. On a preset date, it would detach, float to the surface, and transmit everything it had gathered to a satellite. It was the only witness to what happened next. No camera followed the animal out into the open ocean. Whatever happened in those 4 months happened in the total privacy, and the only account that would ever exist was the one written inside that device. 4 months later, the instrument came back, not by satellite first, but physically. A beachcomber found it washed up on a beach roughly 2.5 miles from where it had been attached to Alpha. The data was pulled off the device and put on a screen, and Riggs was in the room when they read it. Everyone expected the ordinary: depth variations, temperature drift, the slow loops of a large shark working its territory. That is not what the data said. The device logged a depth drop of exactly 1,903 feet. Not a gradual hunting dive, but a near vertical plunge recorded in a matter of minutes. Then, a temperature reading that stopped everything in the room. The ambient temperature around the tag had spiked from 46 degrees Fahrenheit to 78 degrees Fahrenheit, a 32-degree jump. It held stable at that elevated level for an extended period at that depth. Not a flicker, not a sensor anomaly. A sustained, warm, consistent reading logged deep inside water that should have been near freezing at that depth and pressure. Riggs described reading those numbers and refusing to accept them, going back through the data again and again because some part of him was convinced the device had malfunctioned. It had not. The shark was gone, and something at that depth was keeping her warm. That question, what keeps a swallowed great white warm at 1,903 feet down, would take the team years to answer with certainty. At that depth below the surface, sunlight has long disappeared. Pressure reaches approximately 57 atmospheres, nearly 840 pounds per square inch. The water is cold, dark, and silent in ways that have nothing to do with depth metaphors and everything to do with physics. Great whites are not deep-water animals by default. They are a coastal and upper ocean species, living overwhelmingly in the top 1,000 feet of the water column, where sunlight penetrates and prey remains abundant. A sudden plunge to the recorded depth in minutes is not a foraging dive. When a tag logs that kind of drop at that speed, the list of explanations becomes very short, very fast. Before anyone could answer the question, the team needed to understand what kind of animal had just been eaten fully, because most people have no real sense of what a great white shark actually is. What the ocean spent 16 million years building. A great white is not just a large fish with sharp teeth. It is the product of 16 million years of evolutionary refinement, shaped by the ocean into something nearly perfect for a specific job. The largest confirmed specimens approach 20 feet in length and weigh more than 2 tons. They detect a single drop of blood diluted into 100 liters of water. using electroreceptor organs called the ampullae of Lorenzini, packed into their snouts. They sense the electrical fields generated by the beating hearts of animals buried beneath the sand. They burst at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour in short, explosive bursts. Their teeth are serrated, stacked in up to 5 rotating rows, and continuously replaced throughout their lives. When one snaps off, another rotates forward immediately to take its place. Being an apex predator is not primarily about size or speed. It is about position. An apex predator is an animal nothing hunts. Everything beneath it organizes its entire existence around avoiding it. Above it, there is nothing at all. That is the definition of apex, the ceiling. For as long as anyone had studied great whites, science treated them as exactly that ceiling. But here is the part of great white biology that the alpha case ultimately turned on, the part rarely mentioned in documentaries or textbooks. Great whites are not fully cold-blooded. Most sharks are ectothermic, meaning their internal temperature equals the surrounding water temperature. Great whites belong to the Lamnidae family, the mackerel sharks, and carry an adaptation called regional endothermy. Using a dense, interlaced network of arteries and veins called the rete mirabile, Latin for wonderful net, the great white captures the heat generated by its own powerful red swimming muscles. It recirculates it through the body before it can escape through the gills. The result is a shark that keeps its core, brain, eyes, and stomach significantly warmer than the water it swims through. Published research at the South Farallon Islands documented stomach temperatures in wild white sharks elevated up to 14.3 degrees Celsius above the surrounding water temperature. In white sharks measured between 3.5 and 4.6 meters, the stomach held at approximately 78.8 degrees Fahrenheit, while the surrounding water ran far colder. The rete mirabile makes this possible, and that specific number, 78.8 degrees, is what would later appear on Alpha's tag, 1,903 feet below the surface of the Southern Ocean. Great whites also attack from below, using the dark from above camouflage of their charcoal gray dorsal coloring against the deep water beneath them. The strike is not prolonged. It is a single, committing, near-vertical burst from depth toward a target silhouetted against the light above. Whatever happened to Alpha on the surface of that water would have taken only seconds. Nobody on any research vessel anywhere would have seen it happen. Once the warming mechanism is understood, the elevated reading becomes explainable, but the team had to rule out every other animal in the ocean before they could say what it was explainable by. Eliminating the suspects. First suspect, the orca. Orcas kill great whites because it has been filmed and documented multiple times. Off South Africa, orcas have refined an almost clinical technique. They flip a great white upside down to induce tonic immobility, a paralysis-like trance state, then open the abdomen and extract the nutrient-dense liver with precision, often leaving the rest of the carcass largely intact. The behavior is documented and repeatable, and, in specific locations, has been so consistent that orca presence has driven entire local great white populations out of documented coastal feeding areas. In October 2023, a 4.7-meter white shark washed ashore in southeastern Australia, dead. A study published in January 2025 in Ecology and Evolution confirmed, through genomic analysis of swabs taken from the primary bite wound, the presence of killer whale DNA in a bite pattern, specifically characteristic of liver extraction. The authors stated that this was the first genetic confirmation of killer whale predation on white sharks in Australia, and that such predation is likely more prevalent globally than currently assumed. All 4 bite wounds on the shark were examined. One bore killer whale DNA. The others bore DNA from a broad-nosed 7-gill shark, a scavenger that arrived after the kill. So the orca is a real predator of great whites. The temperature data did not immediately eliminate the orca. A feeding orca gut, partly flushed with cold seawater, could theoretically land near 78.8 degrees Fahrenheit, but the depth eliminated it. Orcas are not deep ocean divers. Their deepest confirmed dives fall well short of 1,900 feet. An orca does not casually drive prey to the recorded depth and hold position there. The behavior does not match the body. Orca stayed on the board, but it slid way down. Second suspect, the sperm whale. This animal genuinely lives in the deep. diving routinely past 3,000 feet after squid, deeper than Alpha ever went. The large males stretch to more than 60 feet and weigh more than 100,000 pounds. A sperm whale's throat can accommodate a 9-foot shark with ease. On depth, no problem. But the temperature ruled it out in the opposite direction. Sperm whales are fully warm-blooded mammals running internal body temperatures of approximately 97 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit. 78.8 degrees is far too cool for a sperm whale body cavity. And sperm whales are squid specialists, not 500-pound surface predators. Wrong temperature, wrong diet, wrong direction. Third, other large sharks. A tiger shark or an oceanic whitetip, both aggressive and both opportunistic. Tiger sharks in particular will swallow almost anything that fits, but tiger sharks cap out on record at approximately 14 feet. To swallow a 9-foot shark whole, the predator needs to be substantially larger than the prey. Shark researcher R. Dean Grubbs of Florida State University's Coastal and Marine Laboratory confirmed to NBC News that he had personally witnessed multiple 10 to 12-foot tag sharks being eaten by other sharks. And in every case, the predator needed to be substantially larger than the prey. The math would not close for a tiger shark. Fourth, a colossal squid. The idea surfaced briefly, something theoretically large enough to wrap around a shark and haul it deep. The temperature data ended this theory on first contact. Squid are ectothermic invertebrates. Their internal temperature matches that of the surrounding water. At the recorded depth in the Southern Ocean, a colossal squid's interior would log near freezing, not 78 degrees, out immediately. Notice the shape of this elimination, because it is the whole case in miniature. Every suspect large enough and capable enough to reach the recorded depth was the wrong temperature. Every suspect with a plausible body temperature could not reach that depth. The data had drawn a precise box around the predator, and almost nothing in the entire ocean fit inside that box. Everything in the ocean failed the test, which left the team staring at the one candidate they had been trying to avoid naming. The answer, hiding in the heat. What if the animal that killed Alpha was another great white? Not a rival that got lucky in a surface brawl, not two large sharks clashing over a carcass. A great white of a size the team had not been seriously accounting for. Large enough that a 9-foot, 500-pound great white was, to it, a meal. The team did not guess their way there. They reasoned through the temperature, and the temperature was the hinge that turned the lock. Published research confirms that a standard white shark, exhibiting regional endothermy, maintains a stomach temperature of approximately 78.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, follow where that leads, because this is the hinge of the entire case. A much larger great white changes the whole equation. More body means more muscle mass. More muscle mass means more heat generated by the rete mirabile network. More total body size means that heat is retained far more effectively against cold, deep water. Inside the gut of a truly enormous great white, a steady 78-degree reading at 1,903 feet is not only possible, but it is what the physiology would predict. The number that had looked like a glitch pointed straight at one kind of animal. The depth was no problem either. The assumption that great whites stay shallow is built on where they are observed, not on what they are physically capable of. Satellite tags on large white sharks have recorded dives to depths exceeding 3,000 feet in the open ocean. The recorded drop is extreme behavior, but it falls well within the documented capacity of a very large female during a post-feeding descent. The final calculation: to swallow a 9-foot shark whole, the predator would need to be approximately twice the prey's length. That puts the hunter at a minimum of 16 feet, weighing more than 2 tons. A shark sitting at the very upper edge of what the modern scientific record holds for the species, and possibly past it. The team's conclusion pointed to a female, since females grow substantially larger than males. And when researchers overlaid Alpha's data with tracking information from other large white sharks moving through those same Australian waters, the body temperatures logged by those larger animals matched the warmth recorded by the instrument. The depths, the ranges, the temperature profiles, all of it was consistent with an enormous female great white that had never been formally tagged or documented. She had been in those waters the whole time. One morning in 2003, she crossed paths with a 9-foot great white and treated it like a meal, Then she went deep into the dark to digest it, where no one would ever see. The only reason anyone knows it happened at all is a scrap of instrumentation that drifted onto a beach 4 months later. The 2003 case took over a decade to reach that conclusion. In 2024, another research team found the same answer in different water, with a different shark and a different tracking device. Penelope's story, 4,000 miles away. In October 2020, Dr. Brooke Anderson's research team tagged a pregnant 7'2" female porbeagle shark off Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The shark was named Penelope by the team. She was fitted with 2 satellite tracking devices, a fin-mounted transmitter that sent location data whenever she surfaced, and a pop-off satellite archival tag that recorded depth and temperature internally for months before detaching and transmitting them. The research goal was to track the movements of pregnant porbeagles and identify critical habitats to protect them. A porbeagle is not a small shark. It grows to over 12 feet and weighs up to 507 pounds. It is endothermic in the same lamnidae family as the great white, and is by any measure a formidable ocean predator. Female porbeagles do not reach reproductive maturity until age 13 and give birth to only 4 pups, every one to 2 years. Penelope was not just a large shark, she was pregnant, carrying multiple pups, representing years of slow reproductive investment in a species the IUCN already lists as vulnerable. 158 days after tagging, transmissions began arriving from a location southwest of Bermuda, far earlier than the pop-off tag was scheduled to detach. The fin-mounted tag had gone completely silent. The temperature in the pop-off data had spiked and then stabilized, holding at approximately 71.6 degrees Fahrenheit at depths ranging from 492 to 1,968 feet, and remained steady for 4 consecutive days. Dr. Anderson described her reaction in published interviews. She kept trying to talk herself out of it. She told Popular Science that she ran alternative hypotheses and looked for sensor failures. Every alternative explanation she tested collapsed against the data. The temperature was too warm for deep water, too stable for a drifting tag, and completely consistent with one thing. The device was inside the stomach of a warm-bodied predator. The predator excreted it approximately 4 days after ingestion. That is when transmissions resumed from the surface. The study, published in September 2024 in Frontiers in Marine Science, identified 2 candidates, the great white shark and the short-fin mako, as the only endothermic predators large enough and present in those waters at that time. The diving pattern in the tag data did not match the rapid oscillatory surface-to-depth dives that short-fin makos characteristically perform during daylight in the open ocean. The pattern matched great white behavior. Anderson's conclusion, published in the study and stated to CBS News, was, based on that, it was likely a mature female white shark. She also stated that this is the first documented predation event of a porbeagle shark anywhere in the world. In one event, the ocean lost Penelope, all 4 of her developing pups, and the years of slow reproductive growth that would have produced them. The Atlantic Shark Institute's John Dodd, a co-author on the study, observed, "In the open ocean, size matters, but there is always something bigger." The lesson from Penelope matches that of the earlier case exactly. Being a large, dangerous endothermic shark does not place you at the top. It just means whatever eats you has to be larger and more dangerous still. The original case was the first alarm. Penelope's case, 21 years later, confirmed the pattern. The evidence that this had been happening long before either of them was visible in the sharks themselves. The scars that were always there. Once the team confirmed what happened to Alpha, they went back through the record looking for evidence they had previously not known how to interpret, and what they found had been sitting in plain sight for decades. Dead great whites had turned up for years, bearing massive bite wounds with an arc, a spacing, and a serrated edge that matched nothing except the jaws of another great white. Marine biologists had categorized these as territorial aggression, feeding site dominance behavior, and social competition, anything that stopped short of calling it predation. A study published in April 2025 in Frontiers in Marine Science proposed the first formal classification system for wounds and scars on great white sharks in the northeastern Pacific. The system included a specific category for conspecific aggression, bites from other members of the same species, and a separate visually distinct category for failed predatory attempts by orcas, identifiable by the tightly clustered spacing of pointed teeth. The two wound patterns are not the same. The great white on great white bites are larger in arc, wider in jaw span, and produce a deeper, more serrated wound profile. Once researchers had a classification framework, the frequency with which those marks appeared across documented specimens became harder to explain as random aggression. Living great whites have also been photographed carrying old, healed-over scars in that same unmistakable arc, animals that were bitten by a larger member of their own species and swam away. Every one of those healed scars is the record of an encounter that happened in the total secrecy, far from any camera, and left its signature in living flesh. Once the shape of the scar is known, it starts appearing on sharks previously cataloged as simply old or battle-worn. The behavior starts before birth. Great whites are adelphophagous. The term means brother eater in Greek. Developing pups inside the uterus consume their unhatched siblings as early nutrition before birth. The larger pups eat the smaller ones. This strategy has a name in every textbook that covers shark reproduction. It is not an anomaly. It is the first behavior a great white shark ever performs. The tendency toward consuming the smaller members of its own species is not learned. It is built in from the beginning. In recent years, researchers tracking a pregnant porbeagle recovered tag data indicating that a great white was the predator. As described in the previous segment, the researchers described it as the first documented predation event of a porbeagle anywhere in the world. The lesson, repeated study after study, being a large and dangerous shark does not make you safe. It just means what hunts you has to be larger and even more dangerous. The food chain science assumed ended at the great white does not end there. It keeps climbing into a size range that marine science has barely begun to study. The evidence was always there in the sharks' bodies. The question remaining was whether the animal that left those marks was ever large enough to be a genuine predator. Deep Blue settled that question permanently. Deep Blue and the animals we are missing. Deep Blue is real. She is not a legend, an exaggeration, or a misidentification. She is the largest great white shark ever reliably filmed, and her documented measurements compel a hard look at every assumption marine biology has made about the species' upper size limit. This massive female was first documented by a Japanese film crew in 1999 off Isla de Guadalupe, Mexico, in the Pacific's northeastern basin. She was filmed again in 2013 by shark researcher Mauricio Hoyos Padilla, whose footage went viral after appearing in a 2015 Facebook post and featured in the 2014 Shark Week episode, Jaws Strikes Back. She was then confirmed in January 2019, feeding on a dead sperm whale carcass in open water off Oahu, Hawaii, approximately 2,400 miles from her last documented location, confirming the long-distance ranging behavior of large females. Padilla estimated her length at approximately 20 feet, her weight at over 5,500 pounds, and her age at over 50 years. She is alive, documented, and swimming in the Pacific right now. There is no evidence connecting this animal to Alpha. They were documented in different oceans with no recorded interaction. The only reason she appears in the Alpha case at all is to answer the one question skeptics always raise. Do great whites actually reach that size in the real world, not in Victorian records and fishermen's stories? Yes, she is the answer. The animal that ate Alpha did not need to be a cryptid or a freak. It needed to be a large, old female of a size that is rare but documented. The largest great white ever reliably measured was a female found dead at Ledge Point in Western Australia in 1984, confirmed at 19.5 feet, with a second specimen of 20 feet verified by the Canadian Shark Research Centre off Prince Edward Island in 1988. Both were dead when measured. The living ones have not been tagged. Here is what the Alpha case forces on the scientific record. The global great white population is estimated at between 3,500 and 5,000 individuals. Of those, the number ever fitted with working satellite tags is a tiny fraction. A few dozen animals across a species that ranges across more than 100 million square miles of ocean. The bias in how individuals are tagged runs directly counter to ever finding the largest ones. Research teams work near shore, where great whites are reliably seen. Those tend to be younger, smaller animals. The 19 and 20-foot females range in the deep open ocean, far from coastlines, far from research vessels, far from any camera. They come up for no one. Stack that up, and the consequences get real. Great whites are protected across much of the world, and the conservation strategies that protect them run on population models. Those models treat the main threats to the species as human-caused: fishing pressure, the fin trade, habitat loss, and bycatch. They do not seriously account for the largest great whites, quietly removing the smaller ones from inside the population. If the big ones are doing that at any meaningful rate, then the population estimates, survival projections, and recovery models relied upon are built on data that exclude the most important animals in the species. The great white has always been used as the benchmark, the anchor, the ceiling of the ocean. But if the great white is sometimes prey to a larger member of its own species, then the ceiling is not where it was placed. The apex is dynamic. It depends on size. And that raises the question marine biologists cannot answer comfortably. How many other species confidently called apex predators are actually prey to larger, deeper, rarer individuals of their own kind? Animals never tagged, never filmed, and never written about in a field note. That predator was never named. Not the shark that was eaten, the other one, the hunter. She has no designation, no record, no photograph tied to her. She moved through those waters, did the single most remarkable thing science has ever inferred about her species, and slipped back into the deep without once being seen. The drifting tag washing up on a beach 4 months later was a message from the abyss. It said, "Something is down here that was previously unknown. Something bigger than thought. Something that eats apex predators and descends nearly 2,000 feet to finish the meal in private." Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.